These programs could go on for hours because these guys are so fascinating in their perspectives, but I want to get to some issues with some quicker answers, hopefully. Offshore drilling, offshore New Jersey, approve or disapprove?
10th Amendment. I think leave it up to the state. You know, there's a lot of issues that have presented themselves in the Gulf that I don't think have been addressed, you know, from environmental to all that type of stuff, to regulations on rigs, to actually enforcing that type of stuff.
Would you trust BP in the waters off New Jersey?
I think there's got to be change in what happened, and I think that's going to happen as a result of what happened in the Gulf, and it's going to be difficult. And you know, there are going to be states out there that want to take on that because it is going to stimulate their economy. There are going to be benefits of it, but as I know, the counter to that is well, if Virginia does it, we're right up the shore from them, and it's going to affect us. That kind of stuff has to be addressed because it did affect all the states of the Gulf.
You know, they have the shale, the natural gas situation in Pennsylvania, which is going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs over a period of years, supposedly. How about drilling off New Jersey?
Absolutely disastrous idea. I stand with Republicans and Democrats, including our governor, members of Congress of both parties, staunchly opposed to the idea of drilling off our coast. An absolute disaster. Subtle evolution in Mr. Runyon's position. Before he was for it, now he's kind of for it. And, it's an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster.
It's always been a 10th Amendment issue. Leave it. That's the federal government growing, getting bigger, and getting into people's business. As the 10th Amendment says, if it's not in that Constitution, it's a states' rights issue. As you just said, the governor doesn't want it. It's more than likely, and the legislation doesn't want it. It's not going to happen. But you can't close that door on them.
I would close that door for New Jersey. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Okay, let's talk about some other big issues of the time, the wars in Afghanistan. And although the president is declaring it over, the war in Iraq is far from over. We still have 50,000 troops there. What's the end game for Iraq and Afghanistan? Or should we have an end game?
Well, with Iraq, we have given that country the opportunity to have their version of American democracy, of plurality, of people working together, of different faiths, Shia and Sunni. We've given them a chance. If they screwed up, it's on them now. It matters to us. We want a stable Iraq, but we've sacrificed an enormous number of lives, enormous amount of money to give them the chance of what people in this country too often take for granted, where they don't show up to vote, where they don't
pay
their taxes on time. Afghanistan is a very difficult issue. I've been there. I've spoken recently to General Petraeus. We have, again, brave men and women on the ground there, but it's challenging because we've got a partner there in Afghanistan that's got corruption in the highest level of the government, where they don't seem to be connected to the people. We've got to do a better job teaching them how to help their own people to win the hearts and minds of the Afghani people.
How do you feel about the continuation of both wars and our stand on the ground? Should we stay in both places?
Well, obviously we're out of Iraq now as of that conflict, but moving to Afghanistan, it is a war on terror. You know, it's not something we necessarily didn't start that. But again, I go back to the fact of, you know, let's let the military, we started it. Let's let the military finish it and keep politics out of it. Let them do their job. Because putting constraints on people, saying we're going to withdraw by this date, is only, like Congressman just said, I mean, people in Afghanistan, they'll sit there and wait until you pull out, and the same thing's going to happen. So we got to go in there and do what we have to do and solve this problem. We're not going to force American democracy on them. We're going to allow the people to do what they want and let a lot of these fringe groups not control the country.
Okay, in terms of forcing democracy on people, we have avoided studiously, this country and the members of Congress and the candidates, the story of the guy south of the border in Venezuela, who is a literal butcher and monster, Hugo Chavez. Why is Congress asleep on this issue? I mean, he's threatening us. He's restricted civil liberties. He constantly does business with Iran. What's going on there?
Larry, you know...
And I'm not accusing you of avoiding it. I'm just saying, why is Congress...
been accused of a lot of things, not of causing a problem in Venezuela. Clearly, that country is in turmoil. Their homicide rate is incredibly high, highest, I think, in the world. But if you're suggesting somehow that America should intervene there militarily, we did that in Iraq, and while we performed very nobly there, I'm not sure that was the right move, looking back, to suggest we should go and invade another country. We've got a lot of domestic problems we've got to deal with. We've got to deal with national security issues, the threat of terrorism. Venezuela is very troubling, but I think it's not our fight to fight right now in terms of putting our troops on the ground there.
How do you feel about that guy?
Well, I think it's it's something we're already in a fight. Are we going to go out and start another one, and to what expense? You know, we're struggling with what we're doing now to get to where we think we need to be to accomplish the goal. So to really go out and spread yourself thin, like you just said, if we start with Venezuela, now are we already going to be? What's the next move in Iran? Are we capable of doing that? Do we have the personnel and the money to actually accomplish something like that and make something happen?
Can we afford to allow Iran to build a nuclear bomb, even if they have 2 or 3 of them?
By no way. I don't think so, because I think their blatant disrespect for the people of Israel to even exist, frankly, scares me.
John?
I think there's enormous fear, not just in Israel, John's correct there, but throughout the Middle East. I think there are many Sunni Arab countries that are very afraid of a Shia Persian Iran with nuclear capability.
But the march continues.
Well, and I think I'm disappointed that we didn't do the sort of economic sanctions 5 years ago or 3 years ago. The Senate just passed some recently that are now going into effect that will help in terms of squeezing the money aspect of things. The president and previous presidents have tried to use diplomacy with Russia, with China, with other players to prevent the spread of technology to Iran. We've got to do all we can to stop that country, because that's really a threat to our entire world order.
Okay, I'm going to ask you both about the people who support you and some things that have happened to them. Governor Christie is on a wave now. He's the new National Republican star. Of course, he's supporting you, and you welcome his support. But recently, some big headlines about the administration's failure to properly apply for $400 million in education funds. What happened there? Have you asked him?
I have not, but apparently the news is a clerical error that they sent the wrong information out. Knowing the governor, he will be firm-fisted on the situation and take care of business, because that's how he is, and I think that's how that's how he runs Trenton, and that's how he got elected, is being clean-cut, straightforward, and not pandering, just telling you how he feels and telling you what he's going to do to solve the problems.
Of course, I presume that the Obama White House is supporting you. I could imagine they would not be supporting you, but what would you? The president seems to be in a bit of a groove here, and he's not responding to things like he used to respond to things. Very quiet out of the White House. If you could, what would you tell him?
I think, first of all, it would be helpful to our economy if the president projected a more pro-business appreciation. I think there are a lot of people in the business community that are holding back on investments in goods and equipment and hiring new people because they think there's sort of an anti-business vibe coming out of the White House. So I think the best thing he could do, other than helping to preserve our national security, is to send more of a message to the business community that he wants to work with them to grow our private sector economy.
DRPA, Delaware Report Authority. Ever since I've been in this town, it's been controversial. Years ago, there were accusations that people who were on the commission actually had land at the end of the high-speed line. This goes back to when you were a teenager and you weren't even around. The DRPA, Delaware River Patronage Authority, and there are funds coming from the federal government occasionally to the DRPA. What's your position on that? I mean, there's a Jersey board, there's a Pennsylvania board. It's got to be cleaned up.
Well, frankly, I think you just said it right there. It has to be cleaned up. There have been Democrats in charge of it, Republicans in charge of it. That's what's wrong with politics. They get their hands in it, they get greedy, taking care of each other. They're playing the political game instead of doing what is right. And that's really why I got in this to run. I mean, Congressman Adler's been in politics for 20 years, and I think in this environment, people are ready for change. They want a fresh face, they want fresh ideas. They don't want people that are tied to special interests, that owe people favors, that are out there looking out for other people than the people they actually represent.
DRPA?
I agree with everything John said except anything negative about me. And the reality is I've been in Congress a year and a half. One of the first things I tried to do there was propose legislation which is bipartisan. They would strip anybody that's found guilty of some sort of corrupt offense of their pension. When I was in the state Senate in New Jersey, I saw this corruption all over our state. Republicans, Democrats, every part of our state passed a law saying if you are found guilty or plead guilty to some sort of corrupt offense, you lose your pension. Before that, it was standard. You could plead guilty and still get your pension. Right now, the federal government's spending millions of dollars for people who have pled guilty or spent time in prison. I want to change that attitude. So what things that John's talking about, I've actually begun doing in this Congress in my brief time there.
This may come up, it may not. We've got literally seconds left. Position on should government get involved in the abortion process or the birth process?
Should government be involved in it? They are involved in it on a daily basis. I think the biggest thing is separating myself and Congressman Adler. I think we are both pro-choice, but I have many restrictions, along with no tax money being involved, no partial birth late term, and also parental consent. Which with both of them, he actually voted for in the state Senate.
I'm for freedom. I'm for our Constitution. I'm for a woman's right to choose.
Okay, well, you've heard from Jon Runyan, who's traded his football pads for the rugged game of politics, and Congressman John Adler, first-term congressman. They are up for election in November. Next Sunday night, we'll meet two candidates, actually 2 Sunday nights from now, September 12th, Mike Fitzpatrick, Patrick Murphy, another battle in the 8th District. Good night, everybody.